What's a dead giveaway that someone has been raised in a strict household? Story 1. Personally, I'm afraid to help with any household chores when I'm at someone else's house, like doing the dishes after dinner, because I might do them wrong and then the host would be upset with me. Anything which I need to do, whether it's schoolwork, work for my job, or something that needs doing around the house, I'll try to do when no one is around or where no one can see. I know the person will like the finished product, but if they see me working on it they might get upset that I'm not doing it the right way. Story 2. They apologize excessively. They're always the first person to leave when hanging out, and their parents always chaperoned at school functions in high school. Story 3. Fear of authoritative voices and people. I know people who are genuinely anxious, not because of abuse, but fear of disappointing others. Wow, I'm kinda worried about you guys. Story 4. Fear of being rejected once others know your true bad nature, always feeling like you are not good enough. If your self-worth growing up is entirely dependent on your ability to conform to a particular set of rules and live up to an unrealistic or unhealthy standard, it is very easy to feel like you are fundamentally a bad person when you no longer follow those rules. It thus is difficult to develop your own person and feel confident in your own skin and show your honest self to other people when you feel like that self is fundamentally bad and expect rejection. Edit pronouns. Story 5. A lot of people here are saying things like anxiety and sheepishness, but I found a lot of people from strict households just become better liars, and often are incredibly defiant. If they feel you're telling them to do something they will fight it tooth and nail. My sister, at 27, will refuse to do the simplest of things if I don't ask politely. Edit. People are saying I should always ask politely. This isn't a stranger. This is a person I've known my entire life and who likes to burp in my face to gross me out. We've gone past being polite to each other. Story 6. They are genuinely in shock and awe when they witness normal affectionate displays of parenting. Edit. For everyone commenting that strict and abusive warm affectionate are different, I get it. I am not talking about abusive parents, but definitely not the strict yet warm type that just expects you get good grades. Don't stay out past your curfew, do all of your chores, and don't talk back. That is not what I consider strict. Story 7. My friends used to make fun of me for getting up at 8 a.m. on Saturday to deep clean my apartment. I hadn't lived with my folks for about 5 years, but to this day, Saturday morning is time for chores, and the consequences for missing chores is just something I cannot comprehend. I've been told multiple times that I'm the cleanest bachelor that anyone has ever met. Story 8. They can't yell because loudness has been frightened out of them from a very young age. Took a drama class with one girl and we all had to practice yelling. She couldn't do it, like physically couldn't do it, and broke down in tears trying. The teacher just took her aside and said, "Wow, honey, someone did this to you, do you know that?" Story 9. My heart rate goes up every time I hear someone unlocking the front door of the apartment I live in. Edit. Some of you are sharing your stories, so I decided to chime in. I lived with my abusive father till I was about 8, then he moved out to the US for financial reasons. After that, I moved out to another city with my mother to live with her husband. He was extremely strict, but not physically abusive, but there was a lot of yelling and name-calling. When I turned 14 or so, he would make my do physical labor as punishment for various ups. He owns a construction company. Also, every year I got to travel abroad to see my father in the US. There I would get slapped around, choked out, etc., for talking back or screwing up. No one in my family believed me that was happening, until he came back a few years later. After a few run-ins with the law, he was hospitalized and was diagnosed with schizophrenia, which symptoms stretched back to his early 20s. Despite all that, I don't think I developed any serious or crippling mental problems. I've been in the same relationship for the last 5 years, in planning to start a family. Hey race, hoping I won't go cuckoo anytime soon. Story 10. I come from a strict household and I am very sneaky and I have become very good at making up white lies, but I am also constantly apologizing for everything and I am very jumpy. Edit. I don't lie much anymore, but I used to lie to help my case if I didn't do what I was told, i.e. if I were told to do my laundry and I hadn't yet, I would say I was cleaning my room doing my homework, something that would make them happy. Story 11. Most of the time it's when I meet people who weren't allowed to watch The Simpsons or Family Guy growing up. Edit. Wow, a lot of really great stories in the responses. Thanks for the comments. Didn't think that so many people could associate with this kind of thing. Story 12. If they come to your house and ask for a drink, they won't accept grab something from the fridge. As an option, one does not simply open another's fridge. Story 13. Self-criticism and compliance. At least that's true in my case, and I was raised in a strict household until my parents separated. I tend to be perfectionistic about my behavior. I don't like to make any mistakes at all, and get very angry at myself if I do make any mistakes. I tend to follow rules, be inhibited and accommodating, and I fail to rebel against authority, but I do rebel against my peers and prefer not to fit in. I've always thought of these as being markers of a strict household. If you were raised in a household that prioritized behavior and doing things right, then you tend to treat yourself the same way as an adult. Oh, also, I'm only really comfortable in situations where I know my role and I know the rules. So I'm very comfortable in formal situations such as work, but very uncomfortable in informal situations such as work parties or any other social event where I don't have a clear role really because I don't feel like I know the rules for socializing. Of course, that's because there aren't any rules. You're just supposed to be a person, there's no objective or direction to it, but I'm very uncomfortable with there being no rules. Give me rules. Oddly, I'm comfortable on dates. Again, I feel like I know what my role is somehow. I know what's happening and what kinds of expectations there may be, so I tend to be very confident when dating. But fortunately, I do not see dates as authority figures. I see them as peers, so I won't be compliant. Story 14 on the flip side. I was raised in a somewhat strict religious household and sometimes see normal, secular family behavior as wildly permissive. You were allowed to go anywhere alone with your girlfriend when you were a teenager. Wow, what do you mean you just decided you didn't want to go to church when you were 16? Your parents didn't force you to go, you could pick out all your own clothes. And your mom let you dye your hair. Story 15. They are rowdy as in university. Once they're on their own, lots of drug use including alcohol and sleeping around. Not that that is a bad thing, they are just experimenting a bit later than most people. Story 16. Currently in a strict household, I'm not allowed to do that, well, get in trouble. I can't go because of my parents. You're allowed to do that. Sorry, I got grounded, that's too late, I have to be back for curfew. Formerly from a strict household. Oh. I wasn't allowed to do that, I never tried that before. About something very common, I don't know, that very famous actor, never heard of it, I never stayed up that late. Story 17. Perhaps immediate obedience in regards to authority figures. This excludes questioning and/or outwardly defying authority from time to time and feeling anxious when visiting a friend's home or the home of a stranger where you don't already know the rules and whatnot. I know for me personally, mostly as a child, I was amazed that so many of my friends were raised in households with looser rules than the one in which I was raised. For instance, many of my childhood friends walked around the house with their shoes on, which I could not believe, and when I would offer to help with the after-supper dishes as I was taught, the parents would smile and shake their heads and tell me that it wasn't necessary and that I could go play. Story 18. Very antisocial. Once walked into my friend's dorm, and while I was waiting for him to come, I saw his roommate and made small talk. The guy started backing off and apologizing to me like it was my dorm. Very weird. Story 19. Really not wanting to disappoint others. I get so nervous in doing something wrong, all the time. Also, if your parents are immigrants, you tend to relate to other people with immigrant parents because they all want to have doctors, lawyers, and such as children. African parents, man. Mine weren't even the worst. They're great, to be honest, especially compared to my friends. Story 20. Being really uptight at other people's houses, not disrupting or moving anything, even if it means not having a place to sit, worrying about where to place things like jacket or a glass, not asking for anything, making sure your friend asked and double-checked with their parent that it was okay for them to have you over. Story 21. Low self-esteem, constantly concerned with how others perceive you, like more than the normal amount, hard to quantify, constant apologies, avoids confrontation to the point where they may lie. Your clock. What clock? Oh, that one, wasn't me, you didn't see me do that, or actively seeks the confrontation to get it over with. I broke your clock, so sorry man, I'll pay you back as soon as blah blah blah. There's no middle ground, just an extreme. Story 22. A couple friends have pointed out that I became a fairly good liar after my mom left, and my dad suddenly decided he was going to be overly strict. I had to cover for my sister to our last landlord, and our friend that lived with us was absolutely baffled by the ease with which I came up with lies and delivered them to his face. I hate lying and I do avoid it as much as possible, but am terrified of confrontation, especially with older men, as my dad was terrifying when he was angry, so if I can get around it with a lie and no one gets hurt, I may choose to. Story 23. Raised in a very strict household, telltale sign. I rarely smile, fun is one of those words I barely use, I don't find the joy in much of anything I do, and the kicker is I don't care. I was raised in Spanish household where my father had the last say and my mother made the rules. Be in at dark, homework immediately you get home. Misbehave. When I got grounded, I got put in the extra bedroom with 4 white walls and a bed. I could not leave except to go to school or the bathroom. The only thing I could do to get away was play baseball, up until I graduated high school, but because we moved to a different state I had no clue where I wanted to go to college. I had my life set when I lived in Florida, finished my senior year as an amazing player, I have trophies and medals and carp to prove it. With no future, me as a human now, I have a horrible attitude, I can't hold a job, relationships are difficult, I hate you I promise, I'm a loner and have 0 friends cause I push them all away at some point, it's hard. But I don't care, I'll just get beyond it. Story 24. 3 things from my own childhood that I'm constantly working on. Obedience. Everything will be done, and done perfectly. Ask them to jump and they won't question how high, they will just jump as hard and as high as they can and pray that it is to your liking. Reserved. They are quiet, unless they are being spoken to, they will not speak. Unless they were specifically invited, they won't show up to a party or group. Explosive anger. It takes a lot to make them show their anger, but when they do, it is highly explosive and violent, generally towards objects. This is learned from the parent. Story 25. Generally, they are extremely adept at lying. They'll have no tells and the cover story will always be airtight. People from strict households typically want to avoid conflict at all costs and have a boatload of experience doing so. Story 26. Are consummate liars at the drop of the hat if they sense they might be in trouble. Comes from kids with strict parents getting really good at planning out complex stories and lies to cover their tracks when they decide to stray outside of the strict household rules. Edited because IDs isn't a word but kids is. Story 27. Lack of confidence. Strict parents damage a child's concept of self-worth and confidence. Even when these children grow up, they depend on others around them for opinion, and can't make decisions on their own. I am one of these people. Story 28. I found it's having a total disconnect from others, or understanding of a lot of basic things. Hearing friends talk about their childhoods now I find it extremely odd. They did so much together as families, they got along with their siblings, went on many trips, got to do what they want, get what they want. It makes me nervous when talking to people because they ask about my childhood, and when I explain it I see nothing wrong, but they get this look on their face, like they're at a funeral or something. It's just harder making connections to people because you second-guess yourself a lot, and are constantly afraid of disappointing others. Story 29. Subtly the system. They can't do it openly because parents will yell, so it's the small things, being passive-aggressive, smart-talking, and backing off if things threaten to get more serious. Story 30. Surprise when parents stand up for their kids no matter what they do. I still don't understand how people can tell their parents everything about their life. I'm at the point where I don't even tell them the good things that happen. Story 31. I kinda disagree with most of the answers here. I think the biggest thing is that they tend to be reserved, they have a fine job, but it's the career their parents planned and the same life their parents lived. They usually lack passion and creativity. They often can't relate to those who deviate even just a bit from the norm. I have known a few exceptions, but I've definitely met a lot of people that seem to have been given a partial lobotomy from their strict upbringing. Story 32. If they were not allowed to watch Forrest Gump because it had drugs in it, personally I thought that Forrest Gump was a more tame movie compared to others that are bad for kids to watch. Story 33. Not being able to say no because of fear, shame and guilt. The expectation to perform often makes the choice for them, and it makes it so hard to say no. Story 34. Is anyone else looking at these and thinking, I'm pretty sure my parents weren't that strict, even though most of the top answers sound really familiar. Story 35. I didn't live in a strict household, but more of a mental and emotionally abusive one. I walk around almost silently. I've startled people I live with because they can't hear me. I speak really softly to the point where people have to ask me to repeat myself. It's hard to do my job sometimes, because I work with the elderly, and I can't bear to bring myself to raise my voice because it makes me feel like I'm yelling. I can't be around loud people in general because I feel like a fight is about to happen. I'm 29 and suffer from really bad anxiety and depression. Have had to switch jobs more times than I count in the 12 years I've been working due to feelings of inadequacy and that I'm going to get into trouble. I haven't been able to complete college because I don't feel like I'm good enough or smart enough. I've started 3 degrees in 5 years of college. Story 36. Manners. Strict isn't necessarily bad, and I've yet to meet someone who had a strict upbringing who is also. I know I had strict parents when my friends stopped inviting me places. I asked why one day and they said, your parents never say yes, so we don't ask anymore. I'm reading all these comments and asking my husband if I do X, Y, and Z. He is saying yes to it all. It's a shock to realize how much my childhood has affected me as an adult. Just out of pure curiosity, those of you like me who are realizing this is you, are you the oldest child? Story 37. Walking, speaking and generally acting quiet. My dad worked night shift, and if a drawer slammed or you dropped the remote there would be to pay. At my girlfriend's house they run around like elephants and I've been asked why I'm always sneaking around. Story 38. They're innocently manipulative. In the sense that they aren't shitty people and aren't manipulative to be in or step on other people, they've just learned to tell the right lies or half-truths to not upset the wrong person, or to minimize the repercussions of something. Story 39. This isn't my upbringing or my parents. The doing chores when no one is looking, the apologizing, the sheepishness. I became this way because of my last marriage, abusive relationship. You're so stupid, you never do anything right. They don't really know how to deal with confrontation, conflict, and speaking up when they feel wronged. They passively subvert their own needs in relationships, because their parents never cultivated their existence. Story 40. Crying over a B or A, because it wasn't high enough. This followed me into college and it's been tough to not freak out about the imaginary consequences. Story 41. They get to university and finally let loose. So loose that they go off the deep end and end up not being able to handle all of the newfound freedom that's available to them. As a college student I've observed this happen far too many times. Story 42. One really good at living multiple lives. Act totally different at work, school, home. 2 bad finances, multitude of reasons. Could be that they couldn't go to college, they didn't get to control their money until now, or 3 lose all the inhibitions at once, cram as much craziness as they can, all that stuff people do from 16 till their mid-20s. This can end up being fine or really really bad for strained relationship with parents, especially if they were narcissists. It can take a while for them to realize this, and they will go through the 5 stages of grief. 5. Lack of friends, could be lack of social skills, having to abandon their strict life, or moving to get away from home. Usually a combination of these. 6. Have difficulty standing up for themselves. Could be in social situations, at work, with a partner, etc. 7. Lack of self-esteem, having been told they had to do better or that they were not good enough. They usually are afraid that they will disappoint people, amplified by narcissistic parents. 8. Can't make decisions, they haven't been able to yet. 9. Struggle with relationships, they may not have been allowed to have one growing up or it was highly controlled. Home life may also have a huge impact here. Bitter parents fighting are not a good role model, and they often drag their children into the middle of it. Abusive parents can cause a lot of psychological damage too. Trust can be hard to give at first. Not all of these apply to everyone, and there's varying degrees depending on their circumstance and personality type. There's also different types of strict households: parents focused on academic, athletic, financial success, conservative parents, religious parents, uber-religious cult parents, narcissistic parents, and probably a ton more. Warning wall of text incoming. Personally, I came from a cult background. I was the fourth generation born into it, and my family is well known and high up in the cult. Thankfully, I grew up with a really curious mindset and knew it was all a bunch of BS early on in elementary school, but I couldn't say anything about it. In high school, I lived an extreme double life and despised home. Having a decent job was highly discouraged and college was a no-go. I got caught multiple times going to college online and was forced to drop out or get kicked out with no savings, during the middle of the recession. I've been a DevOps engineer for 4 years now, after working as a web developer and sysadmin for 3 years, but since I don't have a degree, I'm stuck making $30,000 in Portland, Oregon. I can't really afford rent, and live in an office. I've been applying for jobs like crazy for the last year, but because of the company I work for and the fact that I don't have a degree, I haven't been able to move up. Since I had to drop out of college earlier, I have a 0.0 GPA, can't qualify for FAFSA, and owe $9K still. I moved about 3 years ago with a friend that was in the cult. He helped pay half the rent, and it got me away from my parents. He then stopped paying his half and decided to move across town before the lease was up. That ended up being good for me except financially, as it let me fade away from the cult and start on a journey of living a normal life. I started realizing that my parents are never going to leave the cult, and that they were narcissists and their love was conditional. I've limited contact, and eventually will cut off all contact, as once I get kicked out of the cult formally they will not be able to talk to me. It took a while for me to realize, but their actions led to this result, not mine. I've started on a journey to get healthy and lose weight, and even though I have a ways to go, it has helped pull me out of a rut and I feel better than I ever have. I'm now 27, learning how to make friends in a city where I don't really know anyone, going to a music festival for the first time in a couple weeks, and learning to let go of anger and resentment, no matter how much it is deserved. I'm looking at joining the Air Force once I get to my fitness goal, as it's something I've always wanted to do but never could before. Getting over being raised in a strict home, especially in a cult or abusive situation, can be very difficult and straining. I've been through some dark moments in my teens and 20s. Thankfully, even though you were told different growing up, most people really aren't horrible people, and others have gone through the same process. Don't be afraid about asking for help, no matter your political or religious views. We are all humans first and foremost, and we're all in this together. That cool person that you look up to, they've been through their own set of challenges, and most people don't bite. Treat others with respect, be kind, don't focus on the negative, get up when you get knocked down, and don't be afraid to ask for help. No matter how bad things seem, how bleak you think your outlook is, this life is worth it and you can always improve yourself, even at small changes at first. If you have narcissistic or abusive parents' family, you are not the reason they have problems, and you get to choose how you are going to live your life and treat others. You don't get to choose biology, but you do get to choose your real family, which can be your biological family or friends that you make that will have your back. Listen to constructive criticism. If they are trying to help you gain an outside perspective on what you can improve, it is out of concern for you. However, if they are narcissistic or poisonous, you do not need to put yourself in that situation. If you are depressed, hopeless, in a panic, or thinking it's not worth it, talk with someone. It can be a doctor, a psychiatrist, a friend, even a stranger. There are hotlines where you can talk to someone that has been down that road: doctors, counselors, even fellow Redditors. Nobody is going to look down on you. We're all human, and we all have things we struggle with. If you are ever in a situation where you can lend a hand to help someone, even if it's just listening, do it. The smallest gestures can make the biggest difference. Treat everyone and everything around you with love and respect. Be peaceable and seek unity. We may live in different countries, have different cultures, different colors of skin, love different people, identify differently than others, be interested in different things, but we are all humans. We all make mistakes, and everything we do, whether it be positive or negative, has a ripple effect. This applies to yourself too. Respect yourself, give yourself credit where it is due, and take time to improve yourself. Doing this will give a better high than any drug, and is worth more than anything money can buy. Story 43. If you say something like "wait" or "hold on," and they freeze like they're about to get beaten, that's a good sign. Even if the beatings were only verbal and emotionally abusive, the reaction is the same. Story 44. When they ask if they can do simple things: "Hey, can I play pool?" Yes, we're in an arcade and it's a public place. This is a real conversation I've had, by the way. Story 45. Being raised in a strict Asian household. I've noticed that over the years I've tried to find more ways to annoy and show distaste for authority figures without actually doing anything that might land me into real trouble. I'm good at finding loopholes and all that. Story 46. The inability to think for themselves, mostly pertaining to fear of inadequacy or not living up to the identity your parents want you to be, i.e. profession, ideology, love, deeply profound answers to your life journey that should never be dictated. My father died when I was young, and I had the luxury of becoming my own man without having an older version of me tell who I'm meant to be. Story 47. Pretty good at lying when they really don't want to be found out. If I'm lying about a trivial thing, it'll be obvious because I'm giggling like a goblin. If it's "I really want buried," It won't be found. I've got plenty of dirt that would have me disowned for generations if my family finds out. Story 48. We are punctual and dependable, and we are staring daggers at you and your ill-mannered children. I dunno, I think a lot of people are confusing strict with abusive. I think my parents did an amazing job. Story 49. They're super rebellious. It's not 100, but in my experience the kids who have pretty lenient but still involved, not absent parents were the straight-A students who didn't drink and respected their family. The friends I had with very overbearing parents were always desperately trying to find some privacy and experience some of the forbidden things their parents were trying to keep them from doing, like having secret social media accounts or sneaking out of the house. They were also a lot more likely to be doing some really dangerous. When you have overly strict parents who equate getting a B in a class with drinking and driving or having unprotected, you have kids who have no idea how to identify serious harmful behavior or differentiate genuine life advice from parental nitpicking. Story 50. If they come over and there is candy available, they eat all of it. Same with soda or any other item they've been rationed or denied. I was raised with candy in dishes all around the house and soda in the fridge when I wanted it. Don't care much about either. Friends would come over whose parents restricted intake or outright denied it, and they would pillage our candy dishes. Story 51. Approval-seeking behavior, fear or excessive respect of authority figures, and low self-esteem. I was raised in a strict working-class family of 6 children, all girls. As the eldest, I had a very short childhood and got used to being a low priority as there was always a new younger child that needed my mother more than I did. I developed mild anxiety and depression as a teenager, especially fearful of getting a poor grade on a test. For years I apologized excessively and mindlessly did whatever an authority figure told me to do. I also hate arguments. I would start crying if anyone in my family started yelling during an argument. It wouldn't matter if the argument involved me. I just hated conflict and still do. I even blamed myself if my younger sisters behaved poorly, believing it was my fault for not setting a better example. It took me moving to another state to slowly discover who I really was under all the pressures of being the firstborn. I still struggle with anxiety and low self-esteem. I'm single most of the time because I don't believe I'm good enough for anyone to ever want me. Story 52. They go absolutely batshit crazy when they are allowed to do something. My friend is 27 years old. He has 4 younger siblings and they all live at home. He has an 11 p.m. weekend curfew. On the days where his mum does push it back to 12 o'clock, he proceeds to use the extra hour to get blackout drunk and make out with strange men in alleys before we have to drag his home. Story 53. No real preference in music. Not in all cases, but sometimes if strict parents don't allow a lot of the inappropriate music of today and don't listen to music regularly, then it can result in their children being quite indifferent. Story 54. When I'm a guest at someone's house, the idea of the host cleaning up after me is mortifying. I even get uncomfortable when I ask if I can help cleaning up after a meal and the host says they can handle it. Yikes. Edit phrasing. Story 55. I made an account just to answer this question. I feel like I can relate to many of these comments. I would say one giveaway is denying that they grew up with abnormal rules, almost having a sense that they need to validate the way they grew up. Sometimes with my friends, when talking about rules I've grown up with, when they mention how strange the rules are, I usually reply with things like, oh no, it's a good thing my parents did that because, or well, it's not all that bad, they just have my best interest in mind, I love my family, and in many ways I've been spoiled beyond belief. But some of the rules they made only applied to me, while my younger sibling got away with more. Whenever I mention it to them, they get upset and think of some lame excuse to support their reasoning. I believe that sometimes households are stricter depending on if you're the oldest youngest child. Gender could have something to do with it too. Story 56. They don't curse ever. When I don't give you an opinion, because they've basically always had the wrong ones for their entire lives. I'm not talking about political opinions, or any large-scope subjects like relativity. I'm talking about when you ask somebody, your boyfriend or girlfriend for example, where they want to eat out, and the only response you ever get is I don't know anything, how about you? That's because whenever they expressed an opinion to their parents they weren't just shut down, they were verbally and sometimes physically beaten into paste. Story 57. Not being able to shake the fact that any relationship is based on conditional love, that you will disappoint your so and they won't love you anymore. My parents always made me feel that in order for them to love me I had to conform to what they wanted me to do. Story 58. I hate being touched and hugged. Getting hugs from my mom are weird and feel too intimate. No self-respect or confidence. Someone trying to pat my back makes me instinctively flinch. Story 59. I don't have any memory before age 8 to 9. I apologize way too much, and I can't hold a steady romantic relationship because I hate letting people love me, even though that's all I desire in life. I'm not sure what happened in my childhood, but I've apparently blocked it all out. Story 60. You learn how to gauge the exact best time to bring up something or ask for something. There was never just asking my mom to go to the movies all willy-nilly. It had to be the right time to ask her, otherwise it was a no and also do all these chores because you for asking. Story 61. The acting out. In grade 12, my then boyfriend lost his virginity to me. Since then, he's fathered a daughter and last I heard is still working in fast food. Another kid I used to work with told his parents at age 15 that he didn't believe in God, they're branamists, and moved into our supervisor's trailer with his girlfriend and their kid because his parents kicked him out. Story 62. This entire thread is hitting my deepest insecurities. If they have an early than normal curfew, or if you hear them giving a speech on why they should go with you for 10 minutes to their parents. Story 63 ID say being used to touching people, like ID have a mental freakout whenever someone I didn't know well touched me, not anxiety. ID just be like, wait, why does this person think it's okay to put their hands on me? I didn't even blame them, it just weirded me out. Fixed it eventually, oh, and a severe repulsion of yelling. Someone yells at me. I'm either going to ignore them or speak in the most calm, condescending way possible, and make them deeply uncomfortable. Story 64 I'm sneaky, defiant, a liar. These were all essential skills when it came to surviving my father. I needed to be able to move without being noticed, hard to pull off at 63, lie without being detected, and fight like until I could escape. He wasn't physically abusive, just believed that he literally knew everything and is never wrong about anything, and the only right way to do anything was his way, and he'd scream at you if you did anything in a way he wouldn't do. Story 65 for me, it's either a strict adherence to the standards by which they were raised, still to the point that they police everyone else on it, or they don't say much due to the massive skeletons in their clothes from rebellious decisions. Story 66 a lot of this thread makes me think more abusive families. Not just strict you must do this, we don't do that, abusive come here you little. Story 67 they do things extremely quietly and are very skilled at not drawing attention to themselves. The only time my adoptive parents would interact with me is if it was time for yard work or I was about to be berated for something, so I got really good at being invisible and not raising suspicions for anything. Which becomes a really odd trait to have when you become an adult who grows up to be an empathetic social butterfly, and you keep accidentally scaring people by appearing out of nowhere all Batman style. Story 68 not sure if strictness caused it, but I never really had privacy or a space of my own living with my parents, never had a bedroom with a lockable door, was never allowed to put up posters on walls or anything would damage the paint, wasn't really allowed to do things in my room unless it was sleeping, computer had to be in an open area. Not really sure if it was strictness or just unintentional limitations by my parents, I just never felt like I had a space of my own. It wasn't my room, it was a room in my parents' house that I slept in and kept clothes in. Kind of extends to today where I feel like I should personalize the place I rent, but I never learned how to make my own space, not really sure how to say it. When I think about doing anything to make it more personal, I worry about what others would think seeing it instead of how it would make me feel. So instead I just don't do anything and the walls are empty. If the couch beddesk weren't there it would look vacant.